As a high-level striker in the martial arts world, a question I constantly get, whether it's from people on the YouTube channel or people I just run into, everybody seems to want to know who are the best strikers in MMA, and not specifically just for MMA rules, but just the best striker overall, somebody that would do great in boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, or MMA. So today we're going to look at 6 guys, 6 strikers who have phenomenal skills that impress even me when I see them on the pads. So today we're going to look at some clips of some guys who just have solid hands. And the way I establish basically how impressed I am with their striking prowess, with their ability to let those shots fly, is I don't always look at the fights. I'm going to look today at the pad work. The pad work is going to let me know what their technique really looks like. What is their highest level of technical capabilities in throwing a punch or a kick? So let's start off and let's go to one of the highest level strikers in the world, Israel Adesanya. He already proved that he is a very high level kickboxer before he moved over to the UFC and then started dominating in MMA. So here's the clip of Israel Adesanya at work. There's probably lots of footage out there of him. This is one of the ones that I could find that I was happy to share with everybody. So we can see Israel's style is very flowy. He doesn't throw a whole lot of power into all his techniques, and that's something that impresses me in his fights as well. He's not whipping shots in with that 100% power. But when we look at his technique, it is fairly proficient. There are a few tiny little, what I would consider errors, but they work for his style, and that's all that matters. It's like Manny Pacquiao. He does things incorrectly, but they work for him. Same thing with Israel. He does not always have his hands high enough, but that's just part of his overall style. He's very flowy, very good at that fake that we just saw there where he slides his leg along. He's a very smart fighter, and certainly one of the people that you have to consider an all-time great when it comes to striking in different styles or different disciplines. Next up, we're looking at one of the few people in the UFC that I have ever watched and gone, holy smokes, this guy could be a high-level kickboxer. In fact, Jose Aldo is at my weight class, and I remember looking at him going, if this guy was at my weight class, he would be a nightmare to fight, mostly because of those low kicks, although unfortunately he's got away from them. So let's check out his pad work here. You can tell as soon as he gets started, he is just power oriented. He slams his shots in. That low kick that you just saw has a beautiful drop on it, which is why he gets some of that extra power, and that flow and that technique. Every technique, like that round kick there, that doesn't look like an MMA round kick to me. That looks like a high-level kickboxing round kick. His body shots are on point. Just everything technically about this guy is so proficient. Now, he has trained a lot with Andy Sauer, and when we look at this clip of him here, where he's doing just single round kicks, it just looks great. And having worked with a high-level guy like Andy Sauer will definitely increase your striking knowledge and your striking abilities. So Jose Aldo, 100% somebody that I look at and go, wow, one of the best strikers in the UFC. Now, next up, we have to talk about Conor McGregor. Now, although his transition to boxing was very short and brief, and he only had the one fight against Floyd Mayweather, you're still fighting the all-time great in Floyd Mayweather, and he did better than I thought he would have. So let's take a look at Conor McGregor. I've always been impressed with his striking. Obviously, that's what he's known for. He does a very good job when we see him there. Tap, tap, and then bang. Switching up the tempo, switching up the pace. Technically, he does some things a little bit odd, a little bit different than other people, but his technique overall is very, very on point. He utilizes his whole body so well to maximize power, and his kicks, maybe his round kicks, are not spectacular. I never look at them and go, wow. But he has a nice front kick, and his spinning techniques, which are a little bit more karate-esque as opposed to kickboxing, are also very on point. So in terms of watching this guy and going, could he be a high-level kickboxer? I don't know about that. But is he one of the highest level strikers in MMA? Absolutely. And when we see him let that uppercut go here, when he's firing it, he's just so technically on point. He makes sure he keeps one hand tight to the head. Like we said before, he whips the whole body in. He's just a fun guy to watch when he does pad work, and he's somebody that I know would be a nightmare to actually compete against, especially because of the power which he has in those hands when he lets those shots fly. Next up, and arguably the greatest of all time in UFC is Anderson Silva. Now, I know he's no longer competing for the UFC, but that's fine. He was around for so long. He doesn't need to stay until his 50s and continue to be a champion to be one of the best. Now, his striking style is very odd. And some things that he does, I don't absolutely love. But you can't argue with the fact that this guy is spectacular, especially now that we've seen him transition to boxing. Fight some older boxers, granted, but still look very good. So when we see him here on the pads, we're looking at somebody who just has a very nice, clean style. He's not whipping the shots in with 100% power, but overall, technically, he's looking pretty darn good. Especially, we have to consider that this pad work is not old. It's not old footage when he was in his prime. This is much, much newer. The guy, I don't know if he's in his late 40s at this point, but just looking solid, and somebody, of course, that I recognize as being an all-time great in the UFC in terms of striking. He's proven that in boxing he can do very well. He has a kickboxing record before he moved into MMA, and 100% somebody who I consider one of the best strikers. Now, the last person that I'm going to share with you today is actually one of my favorite strikers, one of the guys that I look at and go, whew, he might have the best striking in the UFC. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Certainly one of the great strikers. Not the type of striking necessarily that I do, because it's a little bit more martial arts, karate based, but still amazing, no doubt. And the fact that he is able to pull off these karate moves in MMA shows not only that it can actually be utilized as a very dangerous striking style, but it shows how spectacular he is. His round kick here, when we see him, it's very odd the way he kicks and then he drops his foot in front. Boom. All right, that's not something we normally see, but again, he makes it work. Obviously, super high level guy. His hands and his movement are a little bit more karate based point fighting, but if you put this guy in any sport, I think he does pretty well. Even in boxing, even though his hands are low, he's going to be somebody who moves around, who, evades shots, but he'll do well. And if you put him in kickboxing or Muay Thai, I think once again, he will still make life very difficult for all his opponents. And finally, I want to focus on one fighter who, in terms of everybody we've talked about, has received the least attention. Everybody else that we went through, Arasenya, Aldo, McGregor, Silva, and I guess Wonderboy is the only person who has not held a belt, but still a superstar. So this last fighter is not on their level in terms of superstardom, but in terms of striking, when I watch this guy hit pads, and I've seen him in fights a few times, not many, but I've seen him, I go, holy smokes, this guy is incredible. And coincidentally, he's also at my weight class, which makes it a lot easier for me to sort of recognize how good they are. Because if the guy's up at 205 and I'm watching him, I'm not really thinking, well, if I have to fight him, how scary is he? But this guy is scary, no question. Even if I was to fight him tomorrow under kickboxing rules, I'd be going, uh-oh, this is going to be a hard fight to win. And we are talking about Zabit. I honestly don't even know his last name. You guys give me 1 second here, I'll take a look. That's why I can't remember this guy's name. Look at it. Magomed Sad. I'm going to call him Zabit Magomed. That'll make things a little easier for me. So Zabit, holy smokes. I'd seen him fight and had been very impressed. But then I started looking for Padwork footage one day of UFC fighters, and I found these clips. And then I went, whew, this guy is scary. So right here, when we're looking at him work, we're looking at the power. Right here, he's on the right-hand side. Those shots he's throwing are ferocious power. And he's maintaining his technique. As he works in here with this training partner, again, jab to the body hook, he's just doing everything so technically proficient. These round kicks, a little bit of lacking in pivot and not quite as high through the ball of the foot as we would like to see in kickboxing, but still on point round kicks, just looking so good. And then we see him moving in on the hand mitts, and just overall, like if I saw this guy and I went, oh, okay, what kind of fighter is he? I'd go, yeah, this guy could be a boxer. And that's what I want to see when I analyze MMA strikers. I want to be confused if they're a boxer, or are they a kickboxer? Are they a Muay Thai fighter? I don't want to look at them and go, yeah, that guy's definitely an MMA striker, because his striking is not up to par of the other fight sports. So when we look at Zabit, I just can't tell. I can't tell what his primary fight style is, but I know he could be an expert in any of them. Especially when we get to this footage here, where he's just busting out all these fancy spinning kicks. We already saw the solid hands, and then we see these type of kicks here, which not only are fancy, but the way he's throwing them are also going to be super dangerous for landing KO shots. So Zabit, oh my gosh, to me, the highest level striker, the highest level pad work out of anybody that I have seen in the UFC. So guys, let me know, what are you thinking in terms of who is the #1 striker in the UFC, who could do well, not only in that sport, not only in that promotion, but in other fight promotions or other fight disciplines. That to me is the true testament of a high level striker. All of the guys that I mentioned, I truly believe they could switch sports. They could go to kickboxing, they could go to boxing, they could go to Muay Thai, and they will do fairly well. If not, become one of the contenders for the belts straight away because they're able to defeat most of their opponents. If I missed anybody, let me know in the comments below who you think should have been considered in this list as well. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel and get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard. I'll see you back here soon for another video.